Welcome to Facts and Foolishness, everybody. I am your co-host, Uncle Kev. I'm here with my co-host, Auntie.
Auntie Joy.
Yeah,
This is
today
Auntie
we're going
Joy.
to talk about a very serious issue in our community: domestic abuse, domestic violence. Is that correct, Auntie?
That's right. We have today a wonderful, beautiful soul, activist, Erica Lucille Ewing. She is a creative actor, activist, multimedia graphic design creator, fashion designer. Yes, I have some of her fashion clothing in my closet. And a social impact entrepreneur. She graduated from Smith College, Northampton, Massachusetts, and holds a master's in fine arts from Rutgers University Mason Grove School of the Arts. She's an Actors Equity Association and SAG-AFTRA member. From 2017 to 2018, she served as the former chief of staff of Black Lives Matter of Greater New York. Under her leadership, the women of BLMNY spearheaded the Find Our Girls March to raise awareness about child human trafficking in Black and Brown communities. In 2018, she founded Got to Stop LLC, a social impact fashion and consulting company committed to advocacy, education, and social justice. Got to Stop LLC clothing designs use powerful wording to raise social consciousness around social injustice and to spark courageous conversations. Wearing Got to Stop LLC fashions is a purpose-driven act on its own. Erica's tagline is fashion activism. It's not a movement, it's a lifestyle.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to this conversation, Joy. Not to cut you off, Auntie. I'm really looking forward to this conversation. Before we start, I want to explain something. Don't joke me about this wood paneling behind me. I'm at my parents' house recording, so y'all support my parents,
Yes, I think
a little bit of Black history, Joy. We going with a little bit of Black history, man. Who didn't have wood paneling in the house?
We'll take it. We can forgive you for that. We can relate to the memories. So this is our wonderful guest, Erica Lucille Ewing. We're going to bring her on. Welcome.
Welcome. Thank you for having me, Uncle Kev and Miss Joy, Auntie Joy. I like that.
We're going to just turn this over to you to tell us all about how you got into this and what drives you to do this work, this much needed work in the community.
Hi, everybody. This is, I guess I'm going to say, is a humbling experience because talking about domestic violence and the intersections of human trafficking is really, really personal to me. And when we think about domestic violence, a lot of times we are only looking at the physical abuse, the black eyes, the bruises, right? But we're not understanding that it has more forms. So a lot of the work that I do, especially in the fashion, I put a lot of words on the shirt as like I talk about economic abuse, I talk about verbal abuse, psychological abuse, financial abuse, technological abuse. Those are all parts of the violence, but it's all part of a wheel called the control and power wheel. And this is all about to maintain control over somebody else. Why an abuser abuses, that's not necessarily the conversation. And I think we've started to have conversations with different organizations, specifically Exodus House in Harlem, which is the transitional community. And they're men, and we've had conversations about trauma and healing in the Black community. But when we really had to scale back and think about, they are a part of the conversation because they are also victims of domestic violence and abuse. So we're talking about domestic violence and intimate partner violence. So domestic violence, you can get in a fight with your grandmother in a household, and the iron can get hot, you get hit with some grits in a skillet. Okay, that can be a form of domestic violence. Police have to be called, someone has to be removed from the home, right? And maybe you work it out with your grandmother, maybe an auntie calms you down, maybe you don't catch a charge right away because this is something that they want to see as personal. But when someone's injured, at that point, there's a lot of control with the DA. They can decide that they're going to press charges, okay? That's real. Then you have intimate partner violence, where you are romantically involved with somebody, and it's same gender sex, that and it's included, right? And so we have to look at the gamut of this domestic violence. We're even talking about teen violence, teen domestic violence, because a lot of times we're seeing the behaviors really start from a very young age about what are healthy relationships. So even though we're talking about it, we also know that there's some pieces and points of prevention that can happen as well. The tragedy strikes when someone dies. This tragedy strikes when it's too late. And before you know it, this is a victim, a fallen angel. And part of the work that I've done with domestic violence is I've teamed up with different organizations here in New York City that are focused on domestic violence. Voices of Women, which is a battered, sheltered organization, and they work with women that have been specifically victims of domestic violence, finding housing. Returning Hope, another organization that I work with, that we talk about. Ladies of Lavender, another one that I work with. Wild Plus Co. We came together and we formed a group called Sisters in Purple, and we call it, and we say our tagline is, we are the ones that did not die. What's interesting is that we all come from a very different lens, and we have different narratives of how domestic violence became, prevalent in our lives. And for me, I really did not ever wanted to admit, nor did I want to recognize some of the relationships that I was in were domestic violence. And it wasn't at an event. I was asked to be a vendor at an event for activism and come and just show my clothing line and my activism. And then we sat in a circle. And I remember that day very clearly. Sat in a circle. There was law enforcement there. There were credible messengers. They were talking about domestic violence. And something pricked me. And I had to say, hello, my name is Erica, and I am a victim of domestic violence. And for me, that took a lot, because the first thing people say is, how could it happen to you? You're educated, you come from a upper middle class background, you had everything going for yourself, you have a strong voice, no one could take advantage of you. That's not true. Because if you're human, you're vulnerable. And all humans, one thing that we all want to do is we want to belong. We have a need to belong. And that happens for Maslow's triangle about your basic physiological and sociopathical needs, right? Sociological needs. I mean, you have needs here. And in this world, you have food, shelter, clothing, right? And then you move on up the line, and now you get to, I want to belong. And who doesn't? From a 12-year-old that wants to belong, a 10-year-old wants to belong, and even a 50-year-old wants to belong, and even a 60-year-old wants to belong. You want to belong. But when those types of forces about your need to belonging becomes that you will sacrifice your life, your boundaries, your beliefs, because of that you want to belong, that's when it becomes very, very dangerous. That's when we have to do the work internally. And that's where the predators, I would say, those that want to control power and control over you, that's where they take over. And I don't know if they always go, I'm going to do this to you, and they have a target, but I do know that they get into your life and your head in some way, because you start to reveal, and you feel comfortable with people, telling them who you are, what your vulnerabilities are, what you've gone through, what you think about, your thoughts, things that make you happy, things that make you sad. But when people want something from you, sometimes they don't know how to ask. They just take, or they manipulate. Coercive control is what they call it. So it becomes a situation where they're asking you for something that you probably don't feel comfortable giving, but the exchange is that this person's going to love me more. They're going to love me better. I'm going to get something out of this in some way, right? That's mutual beneficial. And then what you realize is tables turn and it's stacked against you. And every time you move that needle of the boundary, they push even harder. So it's almost like, why are you talking about this now anyway? I was doing this before. You weren't saying anything. Now you feel like, oh yeah, you're right. I didn't say anything before. I guess I better be quiet. I guess I have to take it, because everybody use that quote, what you permit, you allow. What you permit, you promote. I don't know if I believe that, but I do know that people use that against you. Even those that you want to seek allies from. You think that someone's your friend and they just turn on you like, oh, you know what? This happens in relationships. People argue all the time. What's the big deal? Oh, they say that to me all the time. That's my culture. I grew up in a house where they curse, but I didn't. So now what? I'm going to change the way I move and what I'm respond to and how I communicate because this person that's what they do. Yeah, well, I did that. And I can't tell you how many times I was called BITCH in one day. And after time and time and time, it really gets to the point where you are almost like numb to it. And there's different kinds of people that respond to abuse. There's reactive abusers. Like, you abuse me, I'm going to hit you. Whitney Houston talked about that. You think he the only one hitting? I hit first. Okay, well, that's something you're going to say, and that's something you're going to do, and everybody responds differently. But everybody doesn't respond that way. I was not a reactive abuser. So you would say it would hit me. I'd internalize it. I'd shut down. And although I had an outward, persona, inward, I was dying. Inward, I was crying at night. Inward, I was silently in tears. I was devastated. It took so much for me to get up in the morning. It took so much for me to get down the street. COVID was a blessing for me because I didn't have to see anybody that could hide. So again, we're outside now. We're back outside. And being back outside and being a victim of domestic violence and now a thriver, survivor of domestic violence and an advocate constantly. I was always an advocate for it. But personalizing it for myself was the most difficult thing because I didn't have everybody's story. I didn't have kids who had to go into shelter. I didn't have to worry about ACS calling me and taking away my child. I didn't have no children, right? So I didn't have that path. And I didn't have to worry about someone kicking me out my home, right? It was my home, right? But I invited monsters in my life. And then how do you get rid of them? How do you stay safe? Again, we are the ones that did not die.
Let's talk about Got to Stop.
So that is at the Unitas Gala, and that's United. Let me just get you the right acronym because every time I do this work with Unitas, I always get the acronym wrong. But Unitas is a anti-trafficking company. It is international. It came to New York probably in 2018. They started doing a satellite. It started in Croatia. And I was asked to be part of the curriculum writing team. So there's a curriculum that we wrote called Lights, and that was made up of different experts, trauma psychologists, advocates, and survivors of human trafficking. And so we won an award, an Anthem Award in 2022 for the transformational curriculum. So Lights, Unitas, UNITAS. Great about that is that we got to ring the NASDAQ bell in 2020. Nice. Yeah, that was amazing. And all of the, my picture was all over the thing and all of our pictures were up, and they were really trying to say that this is about awareness about trafficking. And it was amazing. It's been an amazing group to work with. And that's one of the fashions that I wore at the gala. Fashion activism.
Yes, fashion activism. Speaking of fashion, yours truly.
Yes. So Unitas, let me get that right. United to Fight Against Human Trafficking is the acronym.
Okay. Yes, I was able to wear this wonderful piece to homecoming, my college homecoming the year before. And this is a conversation starter everywhere I went. People were noticing the words on there, the abuse, stop, the big stop in the middle, then there's abuse, gaslighting, human trafficking, violence, and people come up to you and talk about it. So
that's what it's about. Conversation.
Great conversation starter.
Thank you.
Great conversation starter.
You look great in it. You look great in it.
Thank
yeah, I
you.
knew she was going to show that picture.
Of course.
But I got stuff for men too, Uncle Kev. I got boots for men. I have jackets for men. I have shirts for men.
Get your piece. Get your
Yeah,
piece.
I will put in my order. I will make sure to put in my order.
Different different campaigns that I do. An anti-blackness, gotta stop anti-blackness campaign. So you might want to look at that. So it's been amazing. Men love my stuff. I mean, tell you, I wear my boots and they're like, oh, I like that, right? So as long as we have the conversation with the people, we're reaching the people.
She has some great stuff, absolutely great stuff. What is the name of the website? www.gottostop LLC, GOTTOSTOP LLC
www.wordparenting.com.
I want to encourage everybody to go to that website and patronize and buy and get the word out, and let's put a stop. We might not be able to stop domestic violence, but certainly we can try to fight against it.
Definitely.
Absolutely. Erica, thank you so much. It's been wonderful having you. We're definitely going to be reaching out again for part 2 for this.
I appreciate you both. Thank you.
Yes, absolutely.